loss is not a perfect time stamp. As people exploring, this resonated as there were so many details to notice everywhere we went. And this intention also guides how some Jewish communities practice Judaism, being deliberate in their rituals to absorb the meaning. As an example, the B'nai Israel Indian Jewish community has active intervention throughout history. 7 couples survived a shipwreck 2,000 years ago and ended up in Mumbai without their Jewish ritual objects and without their Jewish communities. They spent the following centuries solidifying what practices were most important to their Judaism, saying Shema, keeping kosher, differentiating Shabbat, and circumcising their sons. In the second half of the 18th century, they were influenced by Sephardic custom, once again acting with intention as they built Sephardic-style synagogues and expanded their practices. Today, they are the largest group of Indian Jews with 5,000 community members. At the turn of the 21st century, there were 67,000 B'nai Israel Jews. Similarly, today there are only a few hundred Baghdadi Jews in India. These Jews migrated to Mumbai and Kolkata in the 18th and 19th centuries in response to political and economic challenges in Baghdad. These Jews migrated to Mumbai and Kolkata in the 18th and 19th centuries in response to political and economic challenges in Baghdad and the greater Middle East. Their community remains in Mumbai, but in Kolkata today, there are only 15 Jews, and they're all elderly, and the Jewish life there is inactive. With so many community members moving to Israel and with assimilation so easy as a tiny minority in a huge country, Indian Jews continue to engage with Jewish ritual and with their community with intention. JYP, Jewish Youth Pioneers, is a program of the local JCC and JDC, which hosts events, holiday observances, and engagement opportunities for young Jews. Many of these young people grapple with whether they should make Aliyah to pursue their careers and be part of a larger Jewish community, or whether they should stay in Mumbai to ensure that their tiny community moves on for another generation. They live active Jewish lives, exercising intentionality in a space that is primarily not Jewish. They only eat vegetarian to observe kashrut in a place where kosher meat is challenging to find. They celebrate holidays with JYP. They have Shabbat dinner with their families in their traditionally Indian intergenerational households, and they spend Shabbat at synagogue. At the root of this learning about and engaging with the community, so reflective of our own but so different on many levels, is Jewish communal responsibility. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi teaches in Sota 37b of Talmud, every Jew is not only rendered a guarantor for every other Jew, but they are also rendered a guarantor for every other Jew's responsibility as a guarantor. The Joint Distribution Committee lives out this responsibility in the work that they do, responding to needs and providing support in global Jewish communities to individuals and enabling these communities to sustain themselves. In India, the JDC responded to the need for support for the elderly who do not have family to take care of them. They created an old age home, Baiti. They created JYP, the young adult program, and provide programming for preschool kids and young families. Their model relies on members of the community taking on leadership and sustaining structures. For example, JYP participants serve on the board to plan programming, and they recently planned a fundraiser gala to sustain their work. Responsibility within a community and responsibility for all Jews necessitates being together in a community. In Ta'anit 11a, we read, "Anyone who is distressed together with the community will merit seeing the consolation of the community." Being together in the challenging times can bring comfort, and being together in cheerful times creates joy and transcends individuals. We shared both of these experiences as we visited synagogues in Kolkata and Mumbai. At each synagogue we visited, we gained a more nuanced understanding of Indian Jewish life. We engaged with Kavanah as we bridged what we know and what we do with the Judaism thousands of miles from home. At the first synagogue we walked into in Kolkata, called Magen David Synagogue, it's a Baghdadi synagogue, we gathered by the Ark and sang a B'nai Israel setting of Psalm 150. This moved our tour guide to tears as he thanked us for breathing Jewish life back into a synagogue that is no longer used for prayer. At each synagogue, we had a song or a prayer moment. At one, we sang Gesher Tzar Ma'od in Hebrew and English, and then our Indian counterparts taught us with the same melody the Hindi version of the song. At another, we prayed Mincha, surrounded by posters in the pews of the hostages taken by Hamas in Israel, a scene quite similar to how our sanctuary looked just a few weeks ago. A local interfaith peace organization put these posters up, and praying in that space on the other side of the world with people who care about the land and people of Israel as I do made me feel viscerally connected to global Jewry. In the synagogues, we saw star imagery pointing to the notion of having our descendants be as numerous as the stars in the sky, since in these communities, they do not take Jewish continuity for granted. We saw familiar texts at the entrances of the buildings and above the Ark. There were women's balconies, and there was a small area with fogged glass in one of the sanctuaries that was an accessible women's section for women who couldn't climb the stairs. There was gorgeous stained glass, decorated arcs and curtains, and bimas in the center of the sanctuaries. We saw mikvaot, a kosher wine cellar, and matzah ovens on the premises of synagogues. We saw Torah and Haftarah scrolls in intricate cases. We saw printing blocks used by the Hebrew press of Kolkata to print Jewish magazines and prayer sheets in the early 1900s, and we even saw and ate at a bagel store. We saw a day school connected to one of the synagogues in Mumbai that now has 95% Muslim students, and they still teach Judaism on an opt-in basis. We visited the Chabad in Mumbai, where there was a terrorist attack in 2008 as part of a series of terrorist attacks in Mumbai. We saw a Shulchan Aruch with a bullet hole through it. The rabbi and the rebbetzin were killed, but their son survived and is now a teenager living in Israel with family. In his nursery, which is frozen in time with a colorful aleph bet written on the wall from when he was 2, we sang Psalm 23, which his mother sang to him as a baby, and we recited Mourner's Kaddish for his parents. We met with the small but vibrant Reform Jewish community in Mumbai, and we learned about their hopes to build a new synagogue space for themselves to celebrate their centenary year. We met with the president of a Baghdadi synagogue who cried when telling us his heartbreak over the Israel-Hamas war. We met our incredible tour guide and the devoted staff of the JDC and the local JCC who sustain this community. And as I've mentioned, we met young adults who are the present and the future of Indian Jewish life. To close out our time together, we engaged in one more text study. We had begun the trip learning about Kavanah, intention, as we began engaging with the community and learning about Indian Jewish life. In the middle of the trip, sitting at the JCC in Mumbai, we learned about our arivut, responsibility, which informed our relationship with the people that we encountered and the spaces that we entered. At the end, we studied asiyah, action. This conversation about what we could do when we returned home to continue our learning, employ the lessons we reaped along the way, maintain our new relationships, and continue the conversations made me think about why I wanted to go on this trip in the first place. There's something magical for me about praying in a synagogue thousands of miles from home, using a siddur where I don't know the language that the translation is in or that the page cues are in, but participating fully since I know the liturgy, and being wrapped in a talit in an unfamiliar place with the most familiar feeling. We had these moments throughout the trip, lighting the Hanukkah candles together on the first night in Kolkata, singing and praying in the synagogues throughout the trip, and hearing Torah chanted by an American, an Israeli, and an Indian young person, all with different tropes, but recounting the stories of our tradition. Closer to home, I am reminded that we all have stories, experiences, and traditions that have shaped us. I strive to learn those stories, hear about those experiences, and engage in those traditions, since it will only create more meaning and richness. May we have the humility and vision to act with intention, the knowledge and compassion to fulfill our responsibility, and the curiosity and drive to act. Shabbat Shalom.
Or now. Actually, I was just thinking this is such a powerful message, and there's the experience that you've had. Stand for a second. I'm sure there's so many questions we have, but maybe we'll just take a few here. If anybody has anyone that you want to ask.
Yes, so there are three. Yes, so the question was, did you say that the Jewish community began with a shipwreck, and where were they going? Yes, it did begin with a shipwreck, and I don't remember where they were coming from and where they were going, but they were coming from about 200 kilometers to one of the directions of Mumbai, so they ended up in Mumbai. And there are three main groups of Jews in India. The biggest one, B'nai Israel, started with a shipwreck. The shipwreck happened, 7 couples survived, didn't have anything, and had to figure out how to be Jewish in this new place without their Jewish ritual objects, without the community that they were used to. And so that's 5,000 Jews today who live there, who are B'nai Israel. The second group is Baghdadi Jews. That's the other one that I mentioned. They immigrated from Baghdad in the Middle East in the 17 and 1800s. There's political turmoil. People migrated all over the world. Some ended up in Mumbai and Kolkata. And then the third group, which I didn't mention because we didn't engage with them, because they're in the very south of India where we did not go, is the Kochini Jews. And they immigrated following the Iberian expulsion in 1492. Jews were going everywhere. They, again, ended up in the south of India in Cochin. Yes?
What led you to go to India versus someplace else? What was it here in this?
HUC was offering 2 trips this year through the JDC. One was in December to India. One is coming up in May to Argentina. And the India trip sounded like somewhere that I wouldn't typically go on my own, and so it sounded like a really cool opportunity to get to engage with the new community. JDC is the Joint Distribution Committee. They're a fantastic Jewish organization that does work around the world. They help when there's crisis. They help when Jews in need help with their community. And so in India, they have all this programming. They've been doing a lot in Israel for humanitarian aid, and they work around the world. They have offices around the world. And one branch of them is Entwine, which does trips for young adults to connect young adults to global Jewry. Yes, Robert? Oh, two. Yeah, so they're a super teeny tiny minority. 5,000 B'nai Israel Jews in India is beyond minuscule, which thankfully means that there isn't a lot of anti-Semitism. And so we were pretty careful on our trip to not be wearing kippot in public and to tuck necklaces under our shirt, just because we could be a very visibly Jewish group, and it was not too far after October 7th, but there's not a lot of anti-Semitism. They feel pretty comfortable practicing Judaism, talking about Judaism in their communities. It's more an issue of, will it exist into the future because there's so few in this large space where it's very easy to assimilate.